Welcome to Terrifying Tales, the channel dedicated to telling original horror stories. The Girl Next Door by C.J. Knight. Seeing her in class that day was like seeing a ghost. When we were 9 years old, Amber and I used to play together every day. My mother would always say, "Sam, you and Amber are joined at the hip." Amber lived in the house next door to ours. She was literally the girl next door. One day, Amber didn't come over to see me. Something had happened while I slept. I remember the police cars and ambulance being outside Amber's when I woke. My parents wouldn't tell me what happened. All I was told was that Amber's parents had passed away. Amber's grandmother moved in to take care of her. She was a mean-looking woman, always dressed in black. I never saw her smile. Amber stopped going to school. I went over to the house to see her, but her grandmother always answered the door, and she always told me to go away. The only time I ever saw Amber was if she happened to be looking out from the second floor window as I walked by on the street. The first couple of times I waved, but she looked through me like I wasn't there. I talked to my parents about it. They brushed it off, but I always got the feeling there was something they weren't telling me. Like who was in the strange car that stopped outside her house every Friday night for a few hours. Time went on. I stopped knocking on Amber's door, waving to her in the window, or bringing her up in conversation. 7 years on, Amber was the furthest thing from my mind, until that day in class. Obviously time had changed her. She wasn't the tiny 9-year-old girl with olive skin anymore. Sitting at the desk in the back corner of the classroom, it was still Amber, but at the same time it wasn't, if that makes sense. Her skin was pale, like the colour of the walls in my house. I think Mum called it eggshell white. Her brown eyes no longer held their almond colour, traded for the colour of coals from an extinguished fire. Amber's hair was still a neat shoulder length. She even had it tied back in the ponytail I remembered from years ago. But it looked brittle, like I could grab it and snap it with my hand. My eyes hovered on her a little too long. She stared up at me. I offered her a smile. Amber gave me something I did remember. She stared through me like I was nothing, like she had done from the second floor window. It played on my mind during class. By the time lunch rolled around, I decided I was going to talk to her. The cafeteria was crowded like it usually was, with one exception. Amber sat off at the side, to a table all alone. I tried to appear casual, but my heart raced as I walked toward her table. Why am I afraid? I wondered as I got closer. We used to be friends. Amber didn't look up as I took the seat opposite hers. The tray of food in front of her was untouched. The silence was unbearable. I felt the need to fill it. "Hi, Amber. I'm not sure if you remember me. It's me, Sam. I live next door to you. We used to hang out a lot when we were kids." She never looked up. Her eyes stayed on her food. I felt like an idiot. I'd committed to sitting down, and she clearly didn't want me here. Amber reached into the bag on the ground beside her and lifted a small silver drink bottle out. She unscrewed the lid and sat it on the table. Amber's black eyes met mine for the first time. This wasn't the person I knew as a kid. My throat went dry. Without warning, Amber grabbed the drink bottle and poured the contents into my face. The shock sent me sprawling backwards with a scream off the chair. Laughter erupted through the cafeteria. The liquid touched my lips. It was only water. Of all the faces in the room, only one wasn't laughing at me. Amber was staring down at me wide-eyed. I couldn't be sure, but it looked like fear in her eyes. "You could have just told me to leave. You didn't have to soak me." My anger made those watching laugh even harder. Amber collected her things and hurried from the cafeteria without uttering a word. I was still fuming on the walk home from school. The only saving grace was that it was Friday. I'd have 2 days before the relentless teasing for the cafeteria incident would kick back off. I gave Amber's house a passing glance. Sure enough, she was watching me from the second floor window. It was immature, but I took the opportunity to flip her the bird. Amber pulled the curtains closed in a hurry. My house was quiet as I entered the back door. I found the note in the kitchen. My parents had gone away for the weekend. I'd completely forgotten about it. Like always, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and knocked over my homework. My routine was always getting it out of the way. Then my entire weekend was clear to do whatever I wanted. I unsuccessfully stifled a yawn. It was late, but I didn't want to go to sleep just yet. The light on my phone screen lit up the otherwise darkened bedroom. I'd settled on doom scrolling through social media as my reward for finishing my homework. My phone battery was almost dead. The charger sat on top of my desk on the opposite side of the bedroom. Everything ached as I lifted myself off the bed. I'll never know what made me look, but I glanced down at the backyard from my window. My heart stopped in my chest. Standing still in the middle of the backyard was Amber, her cold eyes unblinking. The same look she'd given me before dousing me with water in the cafeteria. That wasn't the terrifying part. What made my blood run cold was the glint of silver in her hand, the unmistakable blade of a knife. Amber stepped toward the back door until she was out of sight. Did I remember to lock the back door? My question was answered immediately. The sound of the door easing open carried all the way up to my ears. Amber's gentle footsteps traced the floorboards below. Panic gripped my mind and didn't want to let go. All I knew was I had to move. She'd seen me in here. This was going to be the first place she checked. The ironing cupboard sat in the hallway opposite my room. I'd never believed in a higher power, but the fact the normally noisy cupboard door opened silently as I eased it open makes me think someone was watching over me that night. Footsteps coming up the stairs terrified me, deliberate, like a drum marking time. Time for what? I didn't want to find out. The footsteps reached the second floor and stopped right outside the cupboard door. My breath held. Was it a mistake to hide in such a small space? I eased my breath out as Amber's footsteps entered my bedroom. Then it went quiet. What was she doing? Had she gone? Did I not hear her leave? Amber stepped back into the hallway. She continued past the cupboard toward my parents' bedroom. The next sound made my blood run cold. The squeal of the sliders of my parents' mirrored cupboard doors. Amber was searching through the cupboards. My body reacted on instinct. I kicked the cupboard door open and sprinted for the stairs. The high-pitched scream carried behind me. As I hit the stairs, I glanced back. Amber was sprinting along the hallway, knife raised. I took the stairs 2 at a time. My fingers fumbled with the lock of the front door. I could hear Amber coming down the stairs. The lock opened and I stumbled through the door. Amber barreled out behind me. My eyes remained on her screaming figure as I made it to the street. The wind left my body as I slammed into the bonnet of the car and fell back. I felt the weight as Amber landed on top of me. She raised the knife. I closed my eyes and held my hands up. Then the weight vanished. "Calm down, Amber!" 2 men were wrestling with her on the road. One of them gave her an injection. She settled down almost immediately. "Are you okay, kid?" one of the men asked. I found out later that Amber suffered from schizophrenia. Her parents dying had exacerbated the condition. They had placed her in the custody of her grandmother. The strange car I'd seen outside her house every Friday night, the same one I'd fallen into, was her medical team issuing Amber's weekly treatment. The team had found Amber's grandmother dead in the house. With no one to watch her and without her medication, Amber had gone to school and attacked me. Turned out what she'd poured on me in the cafeteria was holy water. When I fell off the chair, Amber thought it hurt me. She was convinced I was a demon and she had to kill me. If those guys hadn't been there that night, Amber would have probably succeeded. If you like what you heard, please like and share the video. Please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. And remember, the dark plays tricks with our minds, but sometimes it's not a trick. Sometimes there really is something there.